Gang Minecrafters, this is MC Rep, and with the additions of the Nether update, Infinity Snapshot, and New World Generation modifications, I don't think it's a stretch to say that Minecraft might be looking at creating another dimension in the near future. Many of us have seen numerous dimension mods and ideas for either new dimensions or those relating to the Nether in the end. After being able to see many ideas and potential creations, I wanted to make a list of 10 things I would like to see in a potential 4th dimension of Minecraft. Going down the list in no particular order, one thing that I'd like to see come to Minecraft would be dynamic plants. I think this 4th dimension could feature some sort of plant that could better interact with the environment or the mobs that are surrounding it better than the plants we have now. Right now, most plants are kind of just either they're small plants that grow into bigger plants creating blocks around them, or they're plants that just change form within the block that they already exist to be able to give the player resources. I would like for these blocks to be able to better interact with the world and the mobs around them. Perhaps they reach out for something, they can change the blocks around them. They spread in a 3-dimensional way to better interact with the world so that they can feel as though they're actually taking advantage of the resources available to them. I think this would be a very interesting thing to see in Minecraft, and I think with the current updates we already have, we've been able to see a greater variety in mobs. We've already had that for a very long time, and I think more recently we've been seeing more additions to, the environment. We've been able to interact with varying landscapes, especially in the Nether, being able to see the landscape change and interact with us in various different ways. And I think this thing could also be extended to the plants that we have in Minecraft to make them a bit more alive and mob-like. Secondly, I think we could have new and more uses of alternative armor. For the main part, most people will just get their iron, their diamonds, their netherite, and in some cases their gold, and if they're really early game, some leather, and make themselves a helmet, chest plate, leggings, and boots, and they'll just be on their way. But recently, we have been getting more additions to kind of have some sort of an alternative armor set. Right now, we only have the turtle helmet and the elytra, and you could also count the carved pumpkin as another slot for the helmet. But we don't have anything for the leggings and boots just yet. And I think to see some new alternative armor set that could be useful, especially in a new dimension of Minecraft, could be really interesting. I think there's definitely a lot of ways that this new armor set can help us interact with the new dimension in particular. And I think being able to have uses for this and better uses for the alternative armor that we already have now, for perhaps the pumpkins and the turtle helmet, could be very interesting. Perhaps maybe using an elytra is the most efficient way to travel the world. And placing blocks or just walking is not going to be the most efficient or not safe or maybe even impossible in some cases. So it could be that would be one way to do it. Perhaps turtle helmets is the only way to breathe in a new liquid that comes in this dimension, or perhaps a particular mob worships turtles, and if you have the turtle helmet, then they will give you all of their right or something, I don't know. But yeah, I think being able to have uses for alternative armor could be a very interesting thing, so that we don't necessarily have to create new armor just by power creeping what we already have. We can have an alternative armor set that gives you various abilities, and so that the dangers of this new dimension are not just these are stronger mobs, but and you just need better armor to protect them, but that you need to have certain pieces in order to be able to interact with the world in different ways that your regular armor may or may not be able to do as effectively. For number 3, I think that more complex mob interactions are very good for Minecraft. With the recent Nether update, the piglins and hoglins definitely boosted this a lot. For example, the piglins interact with the players in various ways by through their goal, by being able to barter, and the piglin brute all interact interestingly. Piglins and hoglins interact by their connections in their communities, where the babies can play together, but the adults can hunt each other, and they hunt interestingly based on their numbers. And piglins also interact with withers and wither skeletons because they attack them as well. And hoglins, of course, interact with the players by attacking them. And I think having more complex mob interactions is definitely a very interesting thing for the game. And I think I would like to see this play out more in another dimension as well. I'd like to see these new mobs be able to interact with each other in a variety of ways to make the game a bit more interesting, to make it more alive, and be able to interact with the player in various ways. in order to make the game more interesting and a bit more challenging, rather than just I can slash my sword or swing my pickaxe and I can get what I want. Next up, I'd like to see a change in physics. I think changing physics in unique ways could make this new dimension a bit more interesting. I think this is one of the few changes I'm going to list here that kind of do what another update did, which is what I really like. Being able to bring players, especially experienced players, back to the kind of noob state, to kind of be in this state where they have to figure out this new world and be able to adjust themselves accordingly in order to survive. I think a change in physics can kind of do that. For example, I think a change in physics I consider a small one would be how liquids work across dimensions. Of course, water changes colors across dimensions, which is pretty interesting, and lava between the overworld and the nether flows differently. And I think being able to expand on this could work. For some random examples, I think perhaps the way splash potions and lingering potions could work, maybe their shape could be different, or perhaps the way liquids work, maybe they flow in different directions or always to a specific direction, or maybe something can affect the direction. Maybe how gravity works, maybe some biomes can change the way how gravity works in their dimension. It doesn't really matter. Anything I think along those lines could be really interesting, and I'll probably make separate videos for each of these points in the future to be able to give some more concrete ideas on what this could look like in Minecraft. But I think changing the physics also goes towards that new feeling, and I think that would be very interesting. Coming up on that point, I think adding to that re-noobing factor, if that's a word, would be strengthening weather in this new dimension. I think having a new dimension that is not as easy for the player to cultivate and control as other dimensions are would be a good addition to Minecraft, especially for our late players. And I think that weather could be a great way to do that as well. Being able to have weather that affects biomes in greater ways, affects what we try to place down, affects our health or hunger bars, or affects how we are able to interact with mobs, I think could be a very interesting thing. And I think this will definitely lead into one of my future points, and I'll make sure to refer back to this. But I think changes in weather could be a very interesting. I don't think anything overpowered. I'm not really looking for something like a tornado that will just like obliterate everything, or an earthquake that will do something super duper drastic and that actually might like slow down the game. But I think there are some smaller ways to be able to do this, or even just unique forms of weather that could be, new and exciting and science fiction type things that could work specifically in this dimension that can add much more to the game. Next up, I think having more uses for unused items could be interesting. We do have a lot of decorative blocks and a lot of forgotten or less used items in Minecraft that I think could use some revitalizing in this thing. I think especially dealing with more complex mob interactions and more AI type things, I think older items could perhaps serve a purpose for them, or they could have a greater use in these dimensions. Kind of like how I was talking about the alternative armor, perhaps the uses for those things are better than their overpowered counterparts compared to each dimension. I think this new dimension giving use to old items could give players a little bit of nostalgia, being able to use some old things again, being able to diversify what players are traveling with or actually farming for. I think being able to kind of get players back on the track of getting some old things that they kind of push aside to be able to prepare for this new dimension could be really interesting. Building upon with the strength in the weather and perhaps even the change in physics, I think this new dimension could give an importance to the way we build. Right now in pretty much any dimension we can just get any block we want and build anything we want, and we should pretty much be fine. The only really exception to this I think could be like messing with gold blocks in the nether, because piglets will definitely be aggravated by that. But outside of that, there's not like a whole lot that the way we build affects how we can survive or how mobs interact with us. And I think, if the weather happens a particular way, if you have to use particular blocks in order to survive that weather, that could be very interesting. Or maybe mobs looks at using certain blocks and may favor or disfavor you based on that. It could be very interesting. Perhaps certain blocks only work well next to other blocks, and you have to be very selective about what you're trying to build. Whatever the case may be, I think giving an importance to building is something that's very important to Minecraft, because I don't think Minecraft has that in any way for that. And I think adding a fourth dimension where it doesn't really affect what we have in our base dimensions, I think is a great place to add that. Similar to kind of building upon complex mob interactions, I think having more variety in our passive and tameable mobs could be very interesting. We don't really have too many utility mobs in Minecraft right now, and I think being able to tame some more or befriend some more could be really interesting to aid us in a new dimension that we don't know anything about just yet. Could be very interesting. I think having passive mobs that interact with each other in complex ways could be very interesting, or just being able to kind of see mobs differently could be very interesting. I mean, for example, there's like horses and cats have lots of variety in them, and being able to see that in a lot of other mobs could just make the game a little bit more lively, being able to kind of go to one biome and see one type of 4D cow, and going into different biome in that same dimension and seeing it turn from yellow to purple, or seeing it have a particular type of grass grow over it from it looking like a piece of liquid. I don't know, whatever. I'll probably make a video on that, but I think seeing some variety in our passive mobs and our tameable mobs could be very interesting. I think it's definitely a slightly neglected piece of work, and I think that passive mobs are definitely very important because they give us food and some of our basic resources, and being able to give some use to them, and I think make them a bit more complex in the new dimension. We don't necessarily have to change anything in the old dimensions, but I think putting this into the new dimension is a great way to introduce these concepts without like overhauling the game as we know it. And finally, I think a new crafting or progression path could be very interesting. For example, with the additions of being able to get wood and stone and gold in the nether, kind of goes along that same path that's in the overworld right now, where you go punch a tree, get wood, get your crafting table, make your pickaxe, get some stone, upgrade, and then move on from there. It's a pretty linear path, and I do like that, especially being able to do that in the nether. It's definitely a lot different than it is in open world, and I like that a lot. But being able to, I think, giving a change to this path could be very interesting. Perhaps you have to go through 3 different types of mobs or villagers in this new dimension, get 3 special resources from them, then you can create your new version of a crafting bench that works slightly differently. Maybe you can't even craft old blocks on it, I don't know, and being able to build on things from there. Perhaps we don't have a use for the fletching table yet. Perhaps the fletching table could interact with this new dimension in a particular way, and extend the idea of what fletching could actually mean inside of Minecraft. And I think that could be very interesting. Maybe everything in this dimension is built upon feathers and flint or something. I think that could be very interesting. And I think having a new crafting progression path, along with perhaps if we do get the world generation modifications feature in the future, I think that it could be a very good thing if we can start in this dimension and try to live out this new progression path. I think is a great thing. Just like I was doing with Nether, I know I like that kind of idea a lot, that being able to kind of play the basic way of Minecraft in a new and exciting way, with different challenges and different expectations, I think is a very, very interesting thing and a good thing, especially for experienced players who, we get used to the basic way to play Minecraft. I've been playing Minecraft recently with some friends, just on some new worlds, and being able to go from wood and leather to stone and then to iron, and then to diamonds pretty fast. I can do that within a couple of hours now, and trying to just beat that time faster and faster is a good experience. But being able to do that same thing in a new and exciting way, I think is extremely fun. It's almost as if that we can kind of play a different game within Minecraft, but it still feels Minecraft. It still has the essence of Minecraft, of being able to Minecraft interact with the world in our own ways that other games simply cannot do. And I think that Minecraft has the platform to do this, and I think a new dimension is the best place to implement this, given that it doesn't interact with the other 2 dimensions we have already in a drastic way. And I think that's the best, the beauty about the 4th dimension is that we're able to add a lot of things or change a lot of things in this dimension without overhauling the overworld or the nether or the end, and like screwing that up for newer players, especially when it comes to remaking old worlds. Once this update comes out, you can load it up, get the update, and go into this dimension, and don't worry about having to pull out hundreds and hundreds of more blocks around outside of what you've already explored in order to see this update. You can just get it from this new dimension, and I think that's pretty helpful for long-term players as well. I think that would be a good addition. But I think lastly, this is kind of a unimportant thing, but I think this has something, I guess I see this more on maybe the lore side or maybe just like a game mechanic, but I think it should be only accessible from one dimension, and I think it should either be the Nether or the End. Currently the dimensions are actually kind of numbered to where I believe, if I'm not mistaken, the Nether is like -1 overworld 0 and End is 1 for like what dimension you're in, like what value that represents. And when I think having a fourth dimension, you either have to be like either -2 or 2, and I think being able to go to that dimension from one dimension kind of gives us a feel about like how dimensions work. That you have to travel this path in order to get from dimension to dimension. Like from Nether, you can go to the overworld. From overworld, you can either go back or to the End, and from the End, you can go back to the overworld or to this new dimension and see how that works out. And I think that's a small feature, but I think it could be interesting for the purposes of game mechanics. Kind of just I don't want to call it a lore thing per se, but I think it kind of it gives something towards how Minecraft works outside of it just being a video game and being a real world. It talks about how that works, and I think adding to that is always a positive thing. But with that being said, I hope to make videos on each of these things, or at least some of them in the future, kind of expounding on some very specific ideas that I think could be good for Minecraft. But with that being said, I think that's going to be everything for this video. Tell me what you think about each of the ideas and what else you would like to see come to Minecraft in a potential fourth dimension. And as always, Minecrafters, don't be a Fortnite fool, Hyto hypocrite, or Roblox reject. Always be the best, amazing, wonderful Minecraft master. Stay blocky.